what I want to do today is talk a little bit about some games that I recommend that people play. They don't cost anything. In fact, I think both of them are free, or they have free versions. But I want to show you how you should be playing games. Games are really good for you. They really force you to do a lot of the skills that we talk about here. But if you don't use the SRL cycle as you're doing the game, if you don't think about what the game is working on and how it's helping you and how it relates to your life, and as a result, how it generalizes into your life, then you're kind of just playing a game. Why do most people play games?
To get a better score.
To get a better score, right? To win, that's the idea. I don't really care if you win. In fact, for most of these games, it's not a win or a lose. In some cases, you will lose, and there may be reasons for that. Maybe you weren't paying attention, maybe you weren't fast enough, etc. But in a lot of cases, it's not a win or lose situation. It's more about the strategy or the process that you use when you're playing the games. Okay? So this is a game called Fairway Golf. And I believe this is free, at least there's a free version of it. The idea is, this is my card, the card I'm looking for. I need to put one of the cards from up here that's either one number higher or one number lower than the card that's visible right here. So if this is a 4, I can put a 3 on top of it, or I can put a 2 on top of it. Make sense?
Does it matter what color?
Doesn't matter what color. Okay? So, from a perspective of what cognitive skills are you using, one obviously is visual tracking. Okay. Now, what I love about this game is this is the basic level. It goes way, way, way more difficult. But the idea is, at this point, with this number of cards and this orientation, we can really practice some good fundamental visual tracking skills. Then, as the game gets harder, the stacks of cards start turning and not spinning, but they're in a different orientation, which throws off your visual tracking, which means you now have to pay more attention, which means you're potentially improving visual tracking. Make sense? So this is working on visual tracking. This is working on problem solving. It's working on decision making. It's working on your planning ability in terms of thinking ahead. How many steps can you think ahead, and then how does that relate to your everyday life? So we'll look at this, and then I'll stop periodically as we do it to make comments, and if you have questions, by all means. So I can either put a 3 or a 5 here, right? So as I scan, I see I have a 5, and I see I have some 3s. But let's look further than that. If I have a 4 here and I put a 5, then I can put a 6, then I can put a 7, then I can put another 6. That's 4 or 5 cards, right? If I choose the 3, I don't have any more to put. It depends on what's behind here, right? But that, do you see? So from a planning perspective, which is the best option? Yeah, so from problem solving and decision making, the best option, having gone through sort of a planning process, is I'm going to choose the 5. Now, the next question is, in this particular case, it's not really relevant because we have 2 cards behind every stack. But if we only had 1 card behind a 6, this 6, and there were 2 cards behind that one, which 6 would we choose? The one that has 2 cards, because part of the process in this is revealing and eliminating all the cards. That's the goal of the game. Okay, so 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, right? And then we have a 6. Okay, so now I'm here, I don't see anything else, but I'm still going to practice my visual tracking. I'm going to start here. I'm going to say I'm looking for a 7 or a 5. So I'm going to start. Now, the way I visually track is I do this, and then for things like this, I come down and I go back. The reason I do that is because if I do this, and then I have to jump down here, remember that visual thing about brain injury and visual tracking that we saw? This becomes really important. As soon as you try to jump down over here, what potentially happens?
Go back up.
Well, you get confused because you're getting distracted by all this other stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and go this way so that I know I'm looking at every single card, and there's no potential. Well, there's always a potential, right? But there's less potential for me to come down here and see this one and then come over here. Do you see what I mean? So there's a structure, a sequence in the way that I approach this. Okay, so I don't have any moves, so I'm going to choose a draw card. That's a 6. That doesn't help me either. Now I have an ace. So I can put a 2 or I can put a king on my ace. So let's think this through. When you're doing, if you choose to do this game, I don't ever want you to think one move ahead. I want you to plan 2 and 3 and 4 steps ahead. So king, queen, jack, 10. Then I can do either a jack and a 10 again, or I can do a jack and a queen. Okay? So in some cases, it really won't matter which one you choose, and in other cases, oops, sorry, it actually will. So what shall we do?
King.
Okay, so we're going to do king, then a queen, then a jack. Now what?
Queen. 9.
Okay, I'm going to stop you for just a second. What just happened was new cards got revealed. Best laid plans, right? You get new information, what do? You SRL, right? So this is a great example. Is I had a plan, I'm monitoring, I realize now cards have changed, so if I keep going with my plan, I'm limiting my potential. So in the SRL cycle, we say, I got my plan, we knew what we were going to do, but now all of a sudden all these new cards get revealed. If I don't take into consideration that new information, right, then I'm limiting myself. How does that relate to your everyday life? If you don't take into consideration new information when it comes available, you're limiting your opportunities. But do you see how that generalizes to your everyday life? So this is a very concrete way of doing something that can generalize into your everyday life if you ask yourself the right questions. And part of what we're doing here is trying to help you learn the questions to ask so that when you leave here, you don't need me to be the one asking you the question all the time. It comes to mind. Okay? So, I now have a jack. I could go to a queen and then a king and then an ace. So that would be 1, 2, 3, right? But I could also go to a jack and then a queen and then a jack and then a 10 and then a 9 and then a 10. Do you see how much more powerful that is? So another thing that this works on is when you're doing decision making, what 2 extremes are there? What are the 2 words that we use for extremes when it comes to decision making?
Two little options or too many?
Okay, sometimes you have too little options, sometimes you have too many options, sometimes you're impulsive, and sometimes you perseverate. So if you're impulsive in your decision making, you're going to see the 10 and you're just going to do the 10, regardless of what the implications are of choosing that 10. Do you see what I mean? However, the opposite of that is when you perseverate. It's like, I'm not sure which one to do. If I do this, and then what happens if I do that? And then you never make a decision. So sometimes in this case, like this decision that we have to make right now is pretty obvious. It's either one card or it's multiple cards. Okay? But if we only had a couple of different options and you couldn't really make up your mind, right? You're perseverating on finding the right answer. And again, in this, there may not be a right answer. There may be multiple opportunities. Okay, so jack, where are we going to go? Queen, we said, right? So queen, then jack, then a 10, then a 9, then what?
10.
Okay, so now, right, SRL, we need to monitor because things are changing as we do this. So if I do a 10, then I can do a 9 and an 8, or I could do a 10 and a 9 and another 10 and then a jack. So that gives me a couple more options. So let's do a 10 and then a 9. And now you see I can do an 8 and then a 9 again. So I'm going to do an 8 and then a 9 and then a, okay, so I'm going to do a 10, Jack, Queen, King, right? Or I could do an 8, 7, not guaranteed that I'm going to find a 6. So which one's better? More options, right? So 10, Jack, Queen, King. Now I have an ace. Now I can go back to a king if I want, and then I could go back to an ace, and then I could do a 2, 3, 2, 3, right? I don't have a 4 now, but I might reveal a 4, right? So let's do ace, king. Is that what we said? And then we're going to do an ace and a, now I have 2 2s, 3 2s. Which 2 should I choose and why?
The one that has one behind it.
The one that has one behind it. So again, that question why is what I'm asking you that you have to learn to ask yourself. Because if you don't stop and if you don't do the SRL cycle and if you don't pause just a second to think of what your best options are, you might have chosen the 2 over here, which isn't bad, but there's more opportunity by choosing this one. Okay? So let's choose this 2. And then we'll choose a 3. Does it matter which 3 we choose?
No.
No, because they both have 2 cards. Then we're going to choose a 2. Does it matter which 2 I choose?
No.
Do you see how I'm asking these questions to make us think?
Mm-hmm.
This process that we're doing right now is what a lot of the subscription brain training services don't do. They give you something like this and they say do it, and then they give you a time and then they give you a score. And then the next time you do it a time and a score, and it might get better. And so you feel like you're getting better. But if you don't recognize how and why you're getting better, and how that new knowledge can apply to your everyday life, you're missing 90% of what's important, from my perspective. Okay, so it doesn't matter which 2 we choose. Now we need to choose a 3. Does it matter which 3?
Yes.
Which one are we going to choose?
The spade.
Okay, so we're going to do this one. Now we can do a 2 again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can do a 3 again. And now we're stuck. Okay? So now we can go back to our draw pile. So now I have a queen.
Mm-hmm.
I have 1 jack. You look disappointed. We only have 1 card that we can use. But see, they came through for us. A 10,
9, 8, 7.
a 9, an 8, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A 7,
Mm-hmm.
an 8 again,
8.
and finally a 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, what you thought was 1 card was like 5 or 6. But think about the SRL cycle, right? If your plan was, I'm just going to click on that, and you don't consider new information, guess what happens? You hit the draw pile without reassessing what is new. Do you see how that relates? Okay, hit the draw pile. King, we get rid of our ace, right? Okay. 7,
Nope.
can't do anything. 4,
Yes.
okay, so what do? We have a couple of things we really need to think about. If we do 4, 3, 4, 5, that would be one way, right? We can do 4, 5, 4, 5 again if we wanted to. But it looks like it's pretty much going to be the same regardless. But we want to make sure that we choose this 5 over that one because we have to find out what's behind there. Okay? So which one do you want to do? 3 or 5? 5? All right. So
5
we'll do,
because then you'll know sooner
That's
what's under
right.
there.
yeah, so I could have chosen this 5, right? But I chose this one specifically because I wanted to see what was behind it. And by
Sooner.
revealing this card, I now have a whole new plan, potentially. So 5, 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
3. Now if I go back to 5, I have 2 cards left. If I do my 3, I have only 1 card left because I can do 3 and then 2. So 3 and then 2. 8 doesn't help me. 4,
Yep.
ta-da!
You won.
Okay, so we won. Now, you don't always win.